You never expect your quiet suburban life to be flipped upside down by an FBI raid. But mine was. 1 minute, I was sipping coffee in my bathrobe. The next, I had a federal agent screaming in my face with a pistol drawn. And all because of one person, Karen. Or, as she prefers to be called, Madeline Greer, our self-declared queen of the HOA. Her vendetta against my RV was annoying at first, until it nearly cost lives, triggered a cartel chase, and exposed secrets none of us were ready for. This isn't just a story about neighborhood drama. It's about ego, power, and how one person's obsession with control turned an entire community into ground zero for a federal investigation. Let me tell you how it all unraveled. I never thought a cup of coffee on my front porch would be interrupted by a federal agent screaming in my face. But here we are. It was a peaceful Saturday morning in Whispering Pines, a cookie-cutter suburban neighborhood where the biggest scandal last year was a mailbox painted turquoise instead of HOA-approved beige. I was halfway through my second cup when the doorbell rang, like someone had pounded the emergency button on a nuclear sub. When I opened the door, a tall man in a black suit stood on my porch, one hand holding a badge, the other gripping a pistol like it had personally wronged him. "Where's the RV?" he barked. My mouth opened, but no sound came out. My stomach dropped. "The RV?" He stepped forward, eyes locked on mine. "It's missing. And unless you want to spend the next few hours cuffed in the back of a bureau van, I suggest you tell me everything you know, right now." That's when it all came rushing back. How a month ago, 2 FBI agents in plain clothes had approached me during my morning jog. How they'd said my job as a cybersecurity consultant had inadvertently helped them trace a communication signal tied to an arms smuggling cartel. How they needed a quiet, unassuming place to park an undercover surveillance vehicle while they monitored suspects. And how, after some negotiation and the promise of a generous check, I agreed to let them park their nondescript RV in my driveway. I also remembered the one caveat they had repeated like a prayer. No one touches the RV. No one. Especially not your neighbors. Which would have been easy, if not for Madeline Greer. Madeline wasn't just any neighbor. She was the self-declared Empress of Whispering Pines, the HOA president who ruled the neighborhood with a pastel clipboard and a passive-aggressive smile. She made complaints like other people made to-do lists. My mailbox was 1 inch too short. My lawn wasn't trimmed at a 45-degree angle. My trash cans were visible for 23 minutes longer than the allowed window. Every week, a new violation notice showed up like clockwork. So when the FBI RV rolled into my driveway, I knew I'd just launched a cruise missile at Madeline's sense of order. She hated that RV like it personally offended her. Claimed it ruined the aesthetic flow of our block. Told the board it created a visual imbalance and might scare the children. I explained, politely at first, that it was temporary, that I had all the necessary permits and documentation. That didn't matter. To Madeline, what she felt was law. I should have seen it coming. The day before the RV vanished, I caught her standing at the edge of my driveway, arms crossed, her face pinched like she'd swallowed a lemon whole. She was muttering into her phone, but as soon as she saw me, she flashed that tight, weaponized smile. "Good morning, Nathan," she said. "You know, the HOA board is considering new parking restrictions. You really should read the bylaws again. I'd hate for this to turn into a problem." I didn't say a word. I should have. I should have demanded to know what she was planning. But I just gave her a nod and went back inside. And now, here I was, facing a furious federal agent and a missing surveillance vehicle. I don't know where it is," I stammered. "I was out of town for work. I didn't authorize anyone to move it." Agent Ramirez's jaw flexed. "Someone did. GPS went dark 12 hours ago. Our internal logs show the vehicle was accessed at 7:14 p.m. last night. Lock override used. That means either someone had the override code or knew where to find it." My mind raced. "She must have towed it," I muttered. Who? He snapped. My neighbor, Madeline Greer. She's the HOA president. She's been gunning for that RV since day one. If anyone had motive, and the gall to get it removed, it's her. Ramirez blinked. Did you just say she towed a federal command center? I nodded. His face turned pale. You have no idea how deep you're in right now. He pulled out his phone and barked into it. Agent Ramirez, possible unauthorized access. Civilian target may have compromised active surveillance vehicle. Get me satellite updates and check license plate logs. Last known coordinates from the onboard relay were near Crystal Lake. He looked at me again, eyes narrowed. Get in the car, now. The SUV tore down suburban streets as I tried not to hyperventilate. So what happens if something goes wrong? If, Ramirez said, barely glancing away from the road. If she touched anything inside that RV, she could have compromised the entire operation. Equipment inside that vehicle is monitoring one of the most dangerous arms trafficking networks operating on the West Coast. He paused. And if the cartel picks up on any interference, they'll burn everything and everyone they think is involved. I swallowed hard. My throat felt dry as dust. Meanwhile, across town, I could already imagine what Madeline was doing. Probably parked at some overpriced campground, drinking Sauvignon Blanc with her book club, telling stories about rescuing the street's integrity by getting rid of my neighborhood eyesore. She had no idea she'd just stolen from the FBI. And worse, no idea that a real criminal organization might think she was one of them. As we sped toward Crystal Lake, my phone buzzed. A text from a mutual neighbor. Hey, is Madeline on vacation? Saw her leaving town yesterday with that RV. Weird, right? Weird doesn't cover it. I stared out the window, heart pounding, thoughts spiraling. This was no longer about property lines or HOA bylaws. This was life or death, and we were already running out of time. By the time we reached Crystal Lake Campground, dusk had dipped the sky into a warm bruise of purple and orange. The tree-lined road twisted around the lake's edge, leading into a popular glamping site that catered to weekenders who liked the illusion of nature. Luxury RVs, string lights, wine tastings, and curated campfire experiences. And somewhere among them was Madeline Greer, oblivious HOA president turned accidental federal fugitive. Agent Ramirez killed the headlights and coasted the SUV to a stop behind a row of cedar trees. He pointed through the windshield. There, parked in a wide, tree-shaded lot, was the RV. Intact, mostly. No bullet holes, no signs of forced entry. A string of decorative lights had been haphazardly draped over the awning, and a fold-out chair was set up on the gravel beside it. On the chair was Madeline, legs crossed, sunglasses on, sipping a glass of white wine like she was royalty on holiday. I nearly laughed out loud. She brought wine glasses? Ramirez didn't answer. His attention was fixed on two men, parked 3 rows down in a matte black SUV with out-of-state plates. They weren't dressed like campers. No plaid, no coolers. Just leather jackets, sunglasses, even now that the sun was almost gone, and a quiet, watchful stillness that set alarm bells off in my chest. Cartel? I whispered. Very likely. Ramirez's jaw tensed. They're waiting to confirm identity. That's good. It means they don't know for sure she's a civilian, yet. As we observed, Madeline stood and walked toward the campground office, muttering into her phone and pointing furiously at something off-screen. It didn't take a lip reader to guess she was complaining. Probably about the rude neighbors in Lot 23. What now? I asked, my pulse hammering. We move fast, quiet. I'll handle the RV, Ramirez said. You, stay out of sight. But I couldn't. Not completely. I knew Madeline. If she saw Ramirez alone, she'd assume he was part of the problem. She had a talent for escalating things faster than a squirrel on Red Bull. We moved as the light faded. Ramirez approached from the east, circling behind a hedge near the RV. I took the side path through the trees. I could hear Madeline's voice now, growing louder as she berated the campground manager for failing to evict obvious criminals. I reached the clearing just as she turned back toward the RV, unaware that those criminals were watching her from their SUV, fingers twitching at their belts. Then everything happened at once. Madeline reached the RV first, muttering about getting her pepper spray. She yanked the door open, stomped inside, and must have hit the wrong button within 5 seconds. The vehicle beeped sharply, then sealed itself in full lockdown mode. The door slammed shut, reinforced locks engaging with a mechanical clunk. "What the hell did she just do?" I hissed. "She armed the security protocols," Ramirez growled, drawing his weapon. "That RV is now a sealed electronic fortress, and it's jamming every signal in a 100-foot radius." Sure enough, my phone went dark. No bars. No Wi-Fi. Even the air felt heavier, like the tech around us had inhaled and was refusing to exhale. Inside the RV, Madeline's silhouette moved behind the darkened glass, pacing like a caged animal. Her phone pressed to her ear. She seemed to be shouting, probably at 911, unaware that the jamming made it impossible to call out. Across the lot, the two cartel men stepped out of their SUV. They exchanged a few words, then split off, one heading toward the RV, the other circling wide around the campsite. Ramirez's voice dropped to a low snarl. "If they get too close, it's over. She doesn't even know she's marked." I made a split-second decision. "I can distract her," I said. "Get her to open the RV." Ramirez glared at me. "You're not trained for this. I'm the only one she'll open the door for." He hesitated, then nodded once. "Be fast and careful." I sprinted across the gravel, waving my arms. "Madeline! Madeline, open up! It's Nathan!" Her face appeared behind the glass, distorted by tinted security layers. I pointed urgently at her control panel, miming an unlock motion. She stared for a second, then, by some miracle, hit the right switch. The door hissed open. "Nathan, thank God," she gasped, stepping aside. "This thing is insane. It locked me in, it blocked my phone, and there are two very shady-looking men who've been following me since lunch. I told the campground manager, but he's obviously part of whatever's going on here." I didn't waste time. "You're in danger, Madeline. Those men are Cartel. You stole an FBI surveillance vehicle. They think you're a federal agent." Her face blanched. "What? That's absurd. No time. Get out. Slowly. Don't wave, don't talk, just follow me." We stepped into the dusk. Ramirez was already intercepting the closest thug, his badge held high. "FBI, on the ground, now." But the man ran. Ramirez chased him through the trees, and I grabbed Madeline's arm, pulling her behind a nearby camper trailer. We ducked just in time to see the second cartel enforcer approaching the RV. When he reached the locked door, he hesitated, just long enough for the cavalry to arrive. Two unmarked SUVs squealed into the lot. Agents in tactical gear poured out. The enforcer turned to run, only to be tackled by three bodies in black Kevlar. Madeline was shaking. "I didn't know. I swear. I thought it was just some eyesore you refused to move. I wanted it gone because it didn't match the landscaping." "You didn't just move it," I said, trying not to scream. "You towed a federal mobile command center across county lines, activated its emergency systems, and, God help us, broadcast a cartel surveillance beacon to half the region." Her voice was barely a whisper. "I was just trying to protect the neighborhood." I turned to her, jaw tight. "Madeline, next time you want to protect us, maybe don't borrow an undercover government vehicle." The morning after the Crystal Lake incident, the campground was crawling with agents. Drones buzzed overhead, unmarked vehicles rolled in and out, and hazmat-suited techs carefully dismantled the RV for secure transport. What was supposed to be a low-profile surveillance operation had become a national embarrassment. And, at the center of it all, standing in her backyard in a freshly pressed HOA polo shirt, was Madeline Greer, determined to salvage her image. "Let's be very clear," she told a reporter from the local Channel 7 affiliate. "I acted in defense of this community. The government never informed me this vehicle was part of a sensitive operation. I had no choice but to remove a visual blight from our street." I watched the segment on my living room TV in stunned disbelief. She had called the press. Ramirez sat beside me, sipping coffee like it was whiskey. "She's more dangerous than half the people I've arrested," he muttered. The FBI wasn't laughing. Ramirez had received a direct order to monitor Madeline closely. Her accidental beacon activation had nearly compromised years of work. But worse, much worse, was what the field team found inside her oversized purse. It was a USB drive, a Cartel USB drive. Apparently, during Madeline's joyride, one of the Cartel informants had slipped it into the RV storage compartment, likely mistaking it for a drop-off point. Unknowingly, Madeline had picked up the drive when she gathered her wine supplies and cosmetics. For 2 days, she carried encrypted Cartel intelligence in her bag, right next to her HOA meeting notes and color-coded community map. "What's on it?" I asked Ramirez, once the news cameras were gone. "Contracts, drop schedules, audio files, encrypted but probably direct conversations between mid-tier distributors," he said. "That drive was what we needed. We'd been chasing it for weeks." "And that, technically," she helped. Ramirez rolled his eyes. "Technically, a raccoon can start a house fire and still lead us to arson suspects." That night, the FBI held a confidential debriefing in my garage. Ramirez, 2 agents from DC, and myself sat around a folding table, reviewing the surveillance footage Karen had unknowingly recorded. She had captured everything, from the moment she entered the RV to her absurd interrogation of campground tourists she accused of smuggling, to her panic-locked self-defense sequence that nearly triggered the RV's self-destruct protocol. "We're lucky she didn't launch a drone strike," one of the DC agents muttered. But underneath the laughs was a gnawing worry. The Cartel now knew someone had accessed their data. Whether or not they believed Madeline was a real agent, they wouldn't risk letting her walk away if they thought she'd seen something. And that meant she was still a target. The FBI offered Madeline protective custody. She declined. "This is America," she snapped. "I'm not going to hide in some bunker just because a few thugs are upset. I'll handle this my way." Her way, it turned out, was a neighborhood watch program. Within 48 hours, Madeline had mobilized half the HOA, distributing fluorescent vests, walkie-talkies, and laminated maps. She installed a hand-painted surveillance zone sign at the entrance to our cul-de-sac, complete with an eye symbol she claimed was intimidating. Ramirez nearly choked when he saw it. "She's going to get herself, no, all of you, killed." I sighed. "Try stopping her." Her operation ran like a parody of law enforcement. Retired grandmothers patrolled the sidewalk in golf carts. Kids were drafted into junior recon teams and given plastic badges. A confused UPS driver was briefly detained after failing to give the code phrase Madeline had invented for package deliveries. Meanwhile, the Cartel wasn't laughing. 2 nights later, someone tried to break into Madeline's house. Security footage caught a figure in a hoodie, attempting to disable the motion sensors on her side yard. He was gone before agents could respond, but it was a message. Ramirez's team went full lockdown after that, and for once, Madeline finally looked afraid. She showed up at my door the next morning, pale, jumpy, and holding a Tupperware of apology muffins. "They came for me," she whispered. "They were in my yard. I heard them." "You should have taken the protection," I said gently. "I thought I could control it, like I always do." I raised an eyebrow. "Control the Cartel?" I don't know what I thought." She sat on my porch swing and stared at the street. "All these years, I thought the biggest threat to our neighborhood was someone painting their shutters the wrong shade of blue. Now I'm learning what real danger looks like." I didn't gloat. I didn't have to. The reality had finally hit her. This wasn't about HOA violations anymore. It was about survival. Later that day, we got the call. The USB drive Madeline had unwittingly carried contained key phrases and encrypted login data to an offshore account used by the cartel's money launderers. It was the final piece in a puzzle the FBI had been building for 2 years. With it, they could issue warrants, freeze assets, and move on major arrests. And it all came from a woman who once fined me $50 for having dandelions. But before any celebration could begin, Ramirez got another alert. The cartel had released a bounty, $250,000 for information on the female agent who accessed their data. Madeline's name wasn't public, but her face had appeared in campground security footage. Now, everyone in the underworld knew what she looked like. We had less than 48 hours to get her safe, or we'd lose her. The night air in Willow Ridge felt heavy, too quiet for a place usually alive with chirping crickets and late-night porch lights. Every shadow seemed to stretch farther. Every silence lingered a little too long. But inside the safe house, hastily arranged by the FBI on the outskirts of town, there was no room for silence, only tension. Madeline Greer sat stiffly at the edge of a cot, still dressed in her signature tan slacks and HOA embroidered windbreaker, clinging to some warped sense of normalcy. Her expression had morphed from defiant to uncertain, and now to something that looked a lot like shame. Across from her, Agent Ramirez rubbed his temples. "Let me get this straight," he said for the third time. "You ignored federal warnings, broke into a surveillance vehicle, tampered with classified equipment, and then triggered an encrypted broadcast relay that just blew open a 2-year sting operation. And now you want out of protective custody?" Madeline's lips tightened. "I can't just vanish. People rely on me. I have board responsibilities. The spring garden competition is next week. There are bylaws." "Madeline," I interrupted gently, "you're the target of a cartel manhunt. The only competition right now is whether they find you before the FBI does something to stop it." Ramirez shot me a grateful look. She stood up, pacing the room with short, anxious steps. "I've spent my entire life managing chaos, committee disputes, neighborhood vandalism, squirrel infestations. I didn't ask for this. I didn't want any of it. But here you are," Ramirez said flatly. That shut her up. The next morning, at 5:12 a.m., a black SUV was caught idling near the end of the gravel road leading to the safe house. By 5:17, it vanished. No plates, no driver ID. Surveillance couldn't make out the face through the tinted glass. "Looks like they're probing," Ramirez muttered as the alert came in. "Testing our security net." Madeline's face went white as chalk. "You said I'd be safe here." "I said we'd try to keep you safe. You don't just shake a cartel." The FBI decided to move her. Again. But getting her out of town quietly was now near impossible. News of the bust was leaking, and though the media hadn't named her, whispers traveled faster than press releases ever could. Especially in a suburb like Willow Ridge, where gossip was as strong a currency as real estate value. So we made a plan. A decoy vehicle. A private route through the maintenance access of the Ridgeview Golf Course. A second car positioned as a tail. Simple. Precise. But nothing involving Madeline Greer ever stayed simple for long. That afternoon, the ambush, the convoy, moved at noon. Ramirez drove the decoy SUV. Madeline, seated in the back beside a young tech agent named Leah, was supposed to be quiet, calm, invisible. Instead, halfway through the golf course's back gate, Madeline, convinced she had spotted a suspicious figure in the trees, grabbed the wheel. "What the hell are you doing?" Leah shrieked as the SUV swerved. "We're being followed." That man had binoculars. "Madeline, that's the course marshal." The vehicle veered off-road, crashed through a shallow embankment, and got wedged into a sand trap, effectively trapping both women inside. A literal bunker. By the time Ramirez and I looped back, it was chaos. A golf cart had flipped trying to avoid the wreckage. An elderly golfer was berating an FBI agent for stepping on his 9-iron. And Madeline? She was hiding under a thermal blanket, sipping from a metal water bottle like she'd just survived a battlefield. "You hijacked your own extraction," Ramirez growled, yanking open the car door. "You just gave away our fallback route." Madeline blinked. "I was, exercising judgment." "Your judgment is going to get you killed." She was silent for the rest of the drive. That was a first. Back at headquarters, the FBI had had enough. The files recovered from the USB had led to 3 major cartel arrests across state lines. Wire transfers were frozen, safe houses raided. But one name kept surfacing in cartel communications: La Señora. Ramirez frowned when he saw it. "We think it's code for Madeline." "La Señora?" I asked. "That's Spanish for the lady," Ramirez confirmed. "The woman who stole the RV and broadcast their secrets." Madeline was now a figurehead in their internal mythology. A ghost in suburban khakis who had upended their empire. And they wanted her silenced, badly. "We need to disappear her," Ramirez told his boss that night. "New ID, new life. She'll never be safe otherwise." But the order didn't come. Instead, the director wanted her to testify, publicly. Her name, her face, her statement, in front of a grand jury. To validate the scope of the sting. To finish what had been started. "You're asking me to stand in a courtroom," Madeline said, voice shaking. "In front of the world." Ramirez looked her in the eyes. "You want to make this right? Then own it." She swallowed hard. "Okay." 3 days later, the jury room. The courtroom was silent as Madeline Greer took the stand. I watched from the back row as she straightened her blazer, adjusted the mic, and began. "I'm not an agent. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who made a lot of mistakes," she said, voice clear and even. But in the middle of it all, I found something I never expected. Truth. And the truth deserves to be told, even if it comes from the most unlikely place, like a gated community in Willow Ridge. She delivered her testimony without flinching. Every wiretap, every accidental activation, every naive assumption. She told it all. And when the defense attorney tried to rattle her with questions about meddling, she stared him down and said, "You're mistaking intention for outcome. I never meant to do any of it, but I did. And now I have to live with it." Silence. Then the prosecutor rested. Ramirez leaned toward me. "She might have just saved lives." I nodded. "And her HOA presidency is definitely over." The sun had barely set when everything came to a head. Despite Madeline Greer's unexpectedly composed grand jury testimony, the FBI's victory was short-lived. Less than 24 hours after the hearing, a secure federal database was breached, not through brute force, through access codes. Internal codes, ones only a select few agents had clearance to use. Someone had sold the cartel information, and the first target? Madeline. That night, back at Willow Ridge. Agent Ramirez pounded on my front door around midnight. "They leaked her name to a contact inside," he growled. "Someone in the bureau. She's blown. They're making a move tonight." I blinked. "Then why are you here?" "Because she ran. We were transferring her to the long-term witness protection location, and she slipped out during a fake bathroom stop. Left her phone. We're tracking her by her last known route." I didn't want to believe it, but then again, this was Madeline Greer. Madeline's whereabouts. While the FBI scrambled to locate her, Madeline had made her way to the only place she thought she'd be safe. Her house in Willow Ridge. The same house, now under cartel surveillance. But in her warped logic, the one place no one would look for her was the place where everyone expected her not to be. The neighborhood had quieted after the trial, and most assumed Madeline was gone for good. But inside her cul-de-sac, parked across the street from her white-columned colonial, A nondescript pickup truck idled. Two men sat inside. One smoked. The other watched through binoculars. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. They were waiting for confirmation. One call and they'd move. And Madeline? She was inside organizing old HOA paperwork. No, seriously. Boxes of committee meeting notes, permit applications, and neighborhood complaints filled her dining room floor. A bottle of wine sat uncorked beside her, untouched. Her fingers moved mechanically through old binders. Nervous habit or one last act of control, no one could tell. Then the lights went out. Power grid? Coincidence? Sabotage? She froze. Her breath caught. Every sound in the house amplified. The ticking clock. The distant hum of the refrigerator. Her own heartbeat. Then, glass shattering. Back door. Kitchen. She grabbed the nearest thing, a brass candlestick, and backed into the hallway. Her voice hoarse as she called out, "This is private property. I will call the authority." A man stepped into the light from the broken doorframe. No mask, just calm eyes, and a silenced pistol. She ran. Simultaneously. Ramirez and I arrive. We had followed her last location data to a gas station near the county line. Surveillance footage showed her boarding a rideshare. The driver was tracked to a drop-off 2 blocks from Willow Ridge. "Of course," Ramirez muttered. "She went home." We didn't wait for backup. We drove straight in. When we hit the corner of Maple Oak Lane, we spotted the broken backyard fence first. Ramirez drew his weapon before the tires had stopped turning. Inside, chaos, a scuffle, a scream, a shot. We burst through the front door to find the living room in disarray. Furniture overturned, papers everywhere. And in the center of it all, Madeline, standing over a man bleeding from the shoulder. Her HOA plaque clutched in both hands. Its heavy base cracked and red. She looked up, dazed. "He broke my window," she mumbled. "I noticed," Ramirez said, stunned. The fallout, the injured man, identified as a mid-tier cartel enforcer, was arrested on site. Later, it was confirmed. Madeline had been marked for assassination as retribution for her testimony. Her foolish return to the neighborhood had made her an easy target, until she fought back. When asked why she ran, her answer was surprisingly simple. "I had to make things right, and I didn't want to disappear, not without settling the dues, so to speak." In classic Madeline fashion, she'd also left signed resignation letters for the HOA board and several notes of apology, neatly folded and dated. Back at the FBI field office. "You know," I told Ramirez, "she may have just become the most unpredictable wildcard you've ever dealt with." He smirked. "She's still not allowed near federal property. Ever again." "Fair." He paused, then added, "But I'll admit, I've seen trained agents freeze under pressure." She didn't. She kept her head. "She's resilient," I said, "and absolutely infuriating. Sounds like someone you want on your side, just at a safe distance." Scene 1. The calm. After the storm, 2 weeks after the failed cartel hit, Willow Ridge had never been quieter. Lawns were a little less perfectly manicured. Mailboxes still stood, but nobody seemed too concerned about their color coordination anymore. The air carried something new, humility. Even Madeline Greer hadn't been seen in public since the attack. Her once daily HOA patrols had stopped. Her newsletters vanished. Her prized clipboards tucked away in a storage unit she was now renting across town. And yet, the silence didn't feel like retreat. It felt like something had shifted. Scene 2. Neighborhood meeting. The first without Madeline. The next HOA meeting was held in the community center. No flyers. No mandatory attendance notices. Just a simple invitation. Let's talk. No rules, no power trips, just neighbors. About 40 people showed up. No podiums, no microphones. Folding chairs in a circle. I came too. Not as a participant, just curious. That's when I saw her. Madeline. She walked in slowly, Not with her usual click-clack heels, but in simple flats. Her hair down, no clipboard, no badge, just a plain envelope in her hand. She waited until the group noticed her. Then she spoke. "I came here to apologize." A few people tensed. Some folded their arms. She continued, voice steady but soft. "I spent years policing your trash bins, grass height, even the way you parked your cars. I believed I was protecting something, but I lost sight of what mattered. And because of my arrogance, I got involved in something far beyond my understanding." She held up the envelope. "This is my resignation from the HOA board, effective immediately. I've also enclosed all documentation of our financials. Transparent this time. No hidden agendas." She paused. "Some of you might think I deserve worse than embarrassment. And maybe I do. But I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just a second chance to be a neighbor." And then, in the most un-Madeline move of all time, she sat down, in the back. Not in control, just present. Scene 3. Community reclaimed. The ripple effect was swift and surprising. One by one, people began sharing stories, not just about HOA grievances, but about isolation, about feeling voiceless, about the invisible walls they'd built between each other under the guise of order. Old rivalries faded. Fences were no longer battle lines. They were markers of shared space. Someone suggested a monthly cookout. Another offered to repaint the old community playground, free of charge. By the end of the night, for the first time in years, Willow Ridge felt like a neighborhood, not a regime. Scene 4. Ramirez's last visit. A week later, Agent Ramirez returned, not on official business. We sat on my porch, beers in hand, watching the sunset hit Madeline's now strangely quiet house. "You think she learned anything?" he asked. "I think she's still learning," I said. "But for once, she's not pretending to be in charge. That's something." He nodded. "We got the last cartel enforcer, the one that ran. And thanks to the USB drive Madeline, accidentally saved, we cracked open a whole communications network. Took down 5 mid-level operations. She had no idea, but she was the key." "She'll never stop telling people she's the reason the FBI won," I muttered. He grinned. "Let her. The truth's in our files. Her legend can be hers." We toasted. "To Chaos Agents," I said. "To HOA heroes," Ramirez replied. Scene 5. One last note. Later that night, I found a small note tucked under my front doormat. In Madeline's sharp handwriting, it read, "Thanks for not giving up on the neighborhood, even when I made it hard to love. P.S. I still think your trash cans are crooked, but I'm learning to let it go." I laughed, shook my head, and tucked it away in a drawer, just in case I ever needed reminding. Final reflection, voiceover style. Sometimes heroes wear badges. Sometimes they carry clipboards. And sometimes they just get lucky. But the real story of Willow Ridge isn't about one woman who accidentally took down a drug cartel. It's about a community that almost forgot what being neighbors really meant, and the chaos that reminded them how to care again.